Welcome back, everybody. I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming an actress, a producer, a writer, somebody whose very interesting movie, which we'll talk about in a minute, is on Amazon Prime. So I suggest for everybody to check it out. We're going to have it right below this video. Please welcome to the program, Nicole Cannon. How are you, Nicole?
I'm good. Thank you, Alan. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a sincere pleasure. Transference is the name of the film that's on Amazon Prime. Again, please, everybody, we're going to link it right below the video. Please take a look. I certainly will after this interview, even though it's not exactly my genre, but I like the idea behind it, which is something that I wanted to discuss. So in terms of the film, Nicole, what was your idea behind it? I know you're a writer, you're a producer. How did that project come about, and why is it important to you?
So a couple of things went into the process. I had written a few other screenplays prior to Transference, all which were very large budget films. And I was having a little bit of a hard time getting anyone to read my work, much less make it into a movie. So my goal in writing Transference was to write something that I could shoot on a budget and produce it myself. And so when I thought about all of the different ideas that I had kind of mulling around in my head, I knew that I wanted to tell this story specifically. Part of it was also because I was taking this class. It's University of Santa Monica spiritual psychology class, which has a lot of stuff about integrating some and doing shadow work and just healing some of traumas from the past. So I knew that it would fit right in with that class. It was our second year project. It was a Sacred Yes project. And I was like, yeah, I just want my voice to be out there as an artist. You know, as an actor, I never really felt like I got to say what I wanted to say as an artist. I'm always moved by the cathartic, you know, story, you know, the one that just actually hits you in that way where you're like, you learn something and you take something home from that. And so I wasn't getting those opportunities as an actor. And I was like, well, what are you going to do about it? Like, why don't you start writing? I'd seen a public service announcement in 2005, which was hit me in a very deep way. It was a little girl pushing a dead girl on a swing. She was pulling a dead girl around in a wagon. She was on a seesaw with a dead girl, and it said, survivors of sexual abuse have to carry a dead part of themselves around with them for the rest of their lives. And I related to that. You know, as a sexual abuse survivor as well, I went through a lot of work to heal that trauma. And I wanted to share that experience in a cinematic way that kind of maybe could help other people who have suffered abuse, maybe help them in their journey. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. And thanks for creating something that hopefully will be a mechanism for healing for others. Are you comfortable telling us, more about what happened to you and how you said that it took you a while to actually go through that process?
Yeah, I can share. I'm going to not give gory details. I don't think we need that. But you know, from about 2 to 4, there was an older cousin. We actually called him uncle. And then there was also a male babysitter who, you know, I had sexual abuse. And I think that because it was at such an early formative age, I sort of had some sort of identification of that being like what I was for in relationship to men. So I actually saw how that patterning followed me throughout my choices in my partnerships and other relationships, and even just with my own kind of self-esteem and how I saw myself. You know, it happened as early as 2, and there were other instances throughout my life growing into a woman where there was, you know, I don't know, sexual assault, you know, from men, various men. And I kind of got sick of either attracting this. I don't know that I was necessarily blaming myself, but I noticed the pattern of it. And I was like, I don't want this to be who I am and how I'm identified. I went to a spiritual retreat in India, and I started doing some really deep introspective work. And it emerged about the sexual assault. And I saw how it was actually followed me throughout my life. And I knew that this is something that I wanted to get out from underneath. like one of the goals there was forgiveness, which I was not able to come to at the time. It was just too fresh for me. I was still too raw and too hurt. And so after about 10 years of like therapy and, you know, different kind of self-help groups, and Hoffman process was a huge, you know, element to my healing that helped me kind of understand, you know, the circumstances which brought me into the situation of abuse, so that I could kind of see it more from outside perspective and finally heal and forgive. So yeah.
And do you find that, again, going through that process and, you know, the many different iterations that it took, that you're at a place now where you feel whole, where you're not hurt, or where your relationships have changed in a positive manner?
I definitely am not attracted to the misogynistic kind of emotionally unavailable guy anymore. So I think that I definitely had some healing within that. I think what happens is there's a deep patterning that goes on when you are abused as a child. You know, you take it on as if it's your fault. So then you tend to attract or look for something that's going to validate that belief that you have about yourself. So there's so much shame that goes on in that. You know, you think you have this like narcissistic superhero complex as a child that thinks that you're responsible for everything, or you can control everything that's going on in your life. So then you take on the blame and the responsibility for the thing that happened, thinking that if you were just different, then that wouldn't have happened to you. Like if you were better, or if you were a good girl or whatever, this horrible thing that happened wouldn't happen to me. And so I think, you know, it took a lot of repeating patterns for me to kind of go, wait, this isn't me. This isn't who I am. This was my circumstances. And I have to actually change how I see myself, so that I'm not going out into the world with that, leading with that identity or that identification.
Yeah, well, it's a process, and thank you so much. Again, I know this is not easy to talk about, and I appreciate you sharing, because I know that, you know, for our viewers, there will be more than one who certainly will echo with that, and maybe that'll help them in their life. So I appreciate that. You know, one of the things that I've never mentioned publicly, so, you know, here's my part of the experience, and I was touched by the fact that it happened to you as a child. When I was a child, I was in the hospital. You know, I was sick as a kid, and I had, you know, asthma and a lot of other issues. And when I was in a hospital, I was molested by a teenage boy. I don't remember exactly how old I was. I must have been, you know, 6, 5, somewhere in there. And the boy was older. I think he was, you know, 16 or so. And that, you know, stuck with me. And as I was growing up, you know, all of that, there is patterning, as you mentioned, there is patterning, and there are psychological elements that you don't really recognize as a adolescent. But it took me onto a path where, for a period of time, I thought maybe I was gay, because that was kind of that emotion and that trauma there, which didn't hit me. I'm not gay. I'm straight. I'm married. But it took me a while to kind of go through that and understand it, that that was not okay. That was not just something that just happened and brush it off. It takes time, and it's a real process. And
So sorry that happened to you. I'm so sorry.
yeah,
I feel like, you know, what we tend to do as children, we compartmentalize. There's this like horrible thing that happens to us, and then we kind of put it away so that we can kind of get on with our life, because we can't actually deal with the heaviness of emotion of what happened. But this part that we kind of locked away from ourselves actually needs recognition, acknowledgement, love, integration. And I think that's what my movie's about. It took me 10 years to get there, and a ton of therapy and lots of different, like, you know, processes to kind of really integrate, understand and integrate that thing. I put it into an 89-minute movie, but it was something that actually took me, you know, 10 years to get to. And so to answer your original question, do I feel healed? I really do. Like, I always felt that there was like something missing. And I always felt that that thing that was missing was outside of me, but it was really just me coming into acceptance and love of this place that I had pushed away and not wanted to deal with. And the minute that I just like forgave myself because of like this misbelief that it was my fault that it happened, and loved that part of myself that I thought was just too ugly and shameful to even look at and love, was I able to kind of step into that wholeness and then just be like, yeah, I'm good. Like I'm good. So to answer your question, yes, I do feel whole and healed. It's not that I don't still have shit that comes up every once in a while. I think we all do. It's just constantly like peeling away. But I feel like definitely having a creative outlet to express that. It's the human condition. So it's like, you know, everybody's story is different. But I think that, you know, my suffering is, you know, not the same as, but relatable to every human being. So
it certainly is. And I think the more we talk about it and the more we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with others, the more connection we're making on a real, true connection with other human beings. One thing that I recognized, you know, my wife and I lost our second pregnancy, you know, between our first and second child. And when you're kind of living in your own, you know, happy bubble, everything is fine. And then my wife was mentioning that she would talk to people, and you know, many women around her have had similar experiences, and they've lost pregnancies, and you wouldn't know about any of these things. So a way for my wife and I to heal was to also be able to share in experiences of others, and that type of genuine connection, and that's one of the positive things in social media, as opposed to a lot of the negative things in social media, is the ability to have a communal experience and to share and to really help each other out. So thank you for sharing that. I'm really happy that it helped you. And when it comes to forgiveness, when you were talking about that, I think again the first and the most important forgiveness is forgiving yourself. And once you let that go, everything else can find its path forward.
And I actually had a lot of pushback on that concept in the making of the movie from several people. You know, I don't think that that's everybody's like last piece. It just happened to be mine. You know, I felt like once I was able to really understand the conditioning of my abuser that created the circumstances of the abuse, I was able to realize that it actually had nothing to do with me. And there was some freedom in that for me. And I'm not necessarily saying like every single person who has had this happen to them has to forgive, because maybe that's not their path. Maybe that's not where they're at in their journey. But that was the last piece for me. So there was a lot of earlier drafts that I adapted so that it didn't feel like I was kind of like on my soapbox, like, you know, you have to do this in order to heal, because I think that there are many different paths to healing. This was just my path, and this is how I finally was able to close that chapter. So
I agree. It's everybody's different, and you know, you've mentioned a couple of the key words, and you know that's where I went like this, because you talked about shadow and you talked about spirituality and spiritual psychology, and you know, digging deep and trying to figure out things that are happening to you. It goes even deeper. And again, whether people believe in this or not is entirely up to them. But you know, we don't know if this was a past life thing that needed to come through, and this was your way of resolving that past life trauma. There are many things that go into this.
so many different things. I mean, who knows? Maybe this happened to me just so I would tell this story. Do you know what I mean? Who knows? I don't even know. I'm a tool for art and creativity, and thank God I have my voice in that way. Thank God I found it. I didn't feel like I really had that voice as an actress. So and that was the biggest frustration with the business, is that I kept on going out for victim roles. And so I kind of had to go, wait, is this like, you know, art reflecting life? Is the reason why I keep on going out for victim roles is because I'm identifying as a victim through this. And so I was like, fuck, get to work. Oops, I don't know if I'm supposed to say swear words. I was like, hey, you know what? Get to work.
Yeah.
Get to work, not only like stop seeing from that lens of victimhood, but also get to work and telling the stories that I wanted to tell. I mean, early on, there was a web series that my ex-husband had written for me for us to kind of do together. It was like my first kind of like attempt at writing. And we were shopping it around for a while, and the agent that was shopping it was like, is this what you want? You know, you put together like a writer statement about why you want to put this out in the world, but it wasn't what I wanted to put out in the world. It was kind of very like kitsch, kind of like, you know, adults misbehaving in their 40s in Brentwood kind of thing. And I was like, this is not what I want to say. I'm like, okay, well, say it. You have a pen, put it to paper, say it.
It sounds cliche and it sounds simple and it's extremely difficult, but being true to yourself is the most important thing to do. Otherwise, nothing that you're going to be doing will ever matter, and you will never be happy. I found that in my own experience of until you accept who you are and what you're about, and certainly choose to improve areas of yourself. But until you come to that place of acceptance, nothing ever will change, and it will not go in a direction that you're going to be happy with.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you did this. But you mentioned, I want to dig a little deeper into what you said of when you were an actress, and you still are an actress. You have a movie in progress, but you still are an actress. If you are an actress, you always are an actress. It's
Yeah.
I'm reminded of what my friend in high school, he was about to go on a date, and he's like, "Okay, Alan, you have to, I have about 15 minutes. You have to teach me how to be a gentleman." I'm like, dude, I can tell you a few things, but you either are or you're not. So it's one of those things. So you're either actress or you're not, and you are an actress. But when you mentioned that you didn't have a chance to kind of speak through that experience, there was one part that certainly was, how you saw yourself, how society, reflectively saw you, because as spirituality and self-help has told us, the world outside is nothing but an expression of what you are within. So I perfectly understand that. But from the industry perspective, putting that first part aside, did you feel like, as a beautiful woman, that there were not enough roles that were allowing you to kind of, be in your own voice, and that were putting you in a specific box?
I love that. I love that question. Yeah. So yes, I will always be an actor. 100%. I'm a storyteller at heart. Like, the empathetic campfire is just where, like, connecting to humanity, being able to explore character through story. I love all of that. I miss it deeply. I just haven't done it in quite a while. So the year before I retired, I was flying back and forth to Canada. My ex-husband worked a couple jobs in Canada, so I was able to get my work permit. And I was getting opportunities there that I wasn't getting in Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, I was going out for, like, guest stars on episodic television and soap operas. In Canada, I was considered a little bit more of, like, a bigger fish at the time. And so I got to go out for this part on the Fargo pilot that was, like, so charactery. And I was like, oh, I loved it. And I, like, literally no makeup, scruffy. And I knocked it out of the park. Literally, it was like my most favorite audition. And I actually called the showrunner agent, and I'm being like, look, can you make sure they see the tape? So yes, 100%, I felt like I was typecast. I don't feel like very many people understood the depth behind the exterior. So I didn't really ever feel like I was being offered those parts. I found it on stage. I definitely found, I got to do, they adapted Rex Pickett's book that they had made into a movie, Sideways, into a play. And I got to play Virginia Madsen's character on stage. And I felt that that was the most fulfilling time for me as an actor, is being on stage. There's something about having the audience. It's just like, it closes that artistic circuit. I think that what I realized with the acting business and television, I felt it less when I did films, but in television for sure, I just felt like a cog in somebody else's wheel. I felt like, I would, do 10 auditions, book one, we'd go shoot it, they'd edit it, it'd amount to like 10 seconds of screen time, 5 of which I could use, and I'm putting it on a reel, and I'm like, this is who I am as an artist? It's not, you know what I mean? It's not represented of me as an artist. And I also felt like there was no closing of that artistic circuit, in the sense that, like, you do your work and people see your work, and then you get feedback from your work. On television, I didn't feel like I got any of that. Whereas on the stage, you're getting that feedback every night. So you're constantly growing and evolving your craft, because you're like, every night you're up there on stage and you're doing your thing, and you're connecting with the other players. And there's also a connection with the audience, and you kind of actually know how it's hit, how it's landed, how you've connected with the people who are receiving it. And I think that's really important as an artist. And I found when I was writing, I had a tangible, thing from my creativity. I could hold it. And then, realizing that it wasn't enough just to have, a script. I needed to actually see it on the screen. So yeah.
That makes sense. So is that why, or one of the reasons why you quote unquote retired before?
Um, like, I've done a couple of friends projects, so it's not like I would say no to a job. The business wore me down. It was just at a really difficult time of my life. I was, having little bit of difficulty in my marriage, so I was like focusing on family, and just got worn down by the business. Yeah, so yeah.
I understand that. So, do you feel more invigorated right now with the project that you wrote and that you produced? Is this a entryway back into the business?
Definitely an entryway back into the business. There was talks for a while of me playing Camille in the movie, and I was like, that's just too many hats for me to wear. Producer, actor, writer. I was like, not interested in that. I loved being on that side of the camera. Like I feel like I might even try directing my next project. I have a Burning Man comedy. I think it has a lot of like commercial potential. I have a couple of ideas for short films that I want to, I know, that I want to kind of, try my hand at directing. I love being on that side. I know I write like an editor, and I know how to communicate to actors to get what I want, and I know what I want it to look like. So yeah, no, I love that side of the camera. It's fun. Editing is amazing. Like, yeah, no, it's really fun. I like it.
Okay. Do you see? I know. I know as an actress, you have another project that we mentioned that we'll put a link on right below. That's in post-prod. But do you see yourself getting back in front of the camera if you find the right project that allows you to be in a role that you like?
Yeah, 100%. Just like doing a favor for a friend, and the grind, the
Yeah.
grind.
Rivers, the upstream story. That's
Yeah,
the
so
one.
that's my director's other film, and he just called in a favor. He's like, can you be in this? And I was like, of course. And that was a lot of fun. I love telling stories. I love the craft of acting. I think I would rather probably like do a play before I actually jump right back into the movie business or film business as an actor. But again, if somebody asked me to do something, I would definitely be on board with that.
See, what would be again? This is the global thinking part of me as a human experience aspect of it. But it would be interesting that now that you've gone through the process of healing, to see if now you're going to be called in for roles that are no longer playing the victim.
I know that we
It would be interesting for me to see. So please, I'll track things as they go forward, and I hope that that's what happens. But either way, you're going to be writing your own story. So if at any point you decide to step in front of the camera, it could be on one of your projects as well.
I think like with this, like the Burning Man one, I would love to do like a cameo because it's like, so funny. So like just kind of more like that, just to kind of play, just have more fun with it, So yeah.
For those actors who are, coming up in the business or in the business that may be facing the same issues that you have been facing when you got burnt out, what would be an advice that you would share for them to perhaps help them in their journeys?
That's a really good question. I think it's important, to have a really good, like, I want to call it a spiritual practice, but I think it's more like self-care. So for me, it's meditation, it's yoga, it's time in nature, just really connecting with self and what is important to them and their purpose, and seeking out that purpose in everything that they do and in every project that they meet. I think I had this really great teacher, Diana Castle, from the Imagine Life. She was amazing because she really helped me understand character and story, and that seeing through the eyes of somebody who in the language is saying have to go to party versus a want to go to party. That's a different life perspective, and really getting to dive into living through that filter, that lens of a character. So then I think when that happens, you tend to like maybe get the victim role and really dive into the world of that person, and you're not really in judgment of it. I think there was probably a lot of judgment of the parts that I was getting. Oh, she's a victim, I'm a victim kind of thing. Whereas like the fun of acting is that you get to really live through the eyes of another human being, and just really maybe the stories or the opportunities that you're getting, or the stories that you're telling are not necessarily exactly what you would want to be saying, but finding the humanity in the parts that you are being offered, and meanwhile exploring other opportunities as a your creativity in other mediums. Find that like that need for creative expression through other mediums that are actually a little bit more in line with exactly what you want to put out. It's okay, bless you. Yeah.
There is so much truth in what you just said, and I think it takes a while for the actors to realize that just because you have certain experiences that you can use in order to understand your character and to pull on from your character, does not mean that those are the best experiences for you as an artist. It is much more rewarding and much more interesting and offering much more growth to you as an individual, as an artist, as a human being, to play characters that are different from you, the ones that you haven't had the same experiences of, because then you can expand your prism and you can look at the world through really a different perspective rather than just in a bad way regurgitating kind of your own path. And it takes a while for actors to understand that, because they grab onto something that's familiar and they can't move forward. And I love that you phrased it. Thank you so much.
I mean, I worked on Streetcar for a really long time. I worked on Blanche, and I remember my mentor Diana Castle was saying, the Stella role. It's like, how can I play an abused woman? I was Blanche, so, but how can you play abused woman? It's like, well, if you have judgment of the character you're playing, you're never going to be able to see from the perspective of that. So trying on somebody else's humanity, it only expands your own being. It only expands your own empathy. And so it's like, it's such a beautiful gift to have, to be able to go out into the world and come into acceptance of many different types of personalities, because you understand that their self-expression is coming from a set of circumstances that you've never lived before. And then you get really curious about another person and like, well, what are those set of circumstances that has this individual's self-expression be like this? Like the quirks, the nuances, even their physical, being, like the way they walk, their tics. You get really curious about people through empathy when you're an actor, and I miss that. But I get to do it with writing. So, but it's like being able to kind of emulate that is really fun.
Yeah, and the key to being able to not be of judgment of others in life and in acting is to first master self-love. Because once you are able to love yourself, that means that you accept yourself. That means you understand that you are not perfect and you have many things that are different parts of you. Then you're able to appreciate, understand, and be more curious and accepting of others. And that way you're never going to be in judgment. Well, never is a big word. You will less frequently be of judgment of others, because you will understand what everybody has to go through. And that's, once I learned that part, it made everything else much easier for me.
Good, that's awesome. It's nice that you had that journey of discovery and acceptance.
Yeah.
You're an actor. Are you pursuing acting in Chicago? Are you doing anything right now?
It's interesting. So I wanted to be an actor as I was a kid, and acting was my dream, my ambition. I was acting in plays. This was in Ukraine when I was there, and I was 100% certain that acting is what I was going to do with my life. And then I immigrated at the age of 14 with my parents. They said, listen, we came here for you to have a better life and for you to have a chance at a existence that doesn't have all of the problems that we came away from. So we don't want you to have a life of an actor, because a life of an actor is most of the time rejection, most of the time uncertainty, and we want you to have.
Sorry about that.
We'll cut that out. That's my past calling me. No. So they wanted me to have more stability. So that part of myself I locked away unsuccessfully. So because I had to get a career and I had to get education and I had to restructure and decide what it is that I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I wanted to be a professional tennis player, and that didn't work out because you have to actually spend all of your time on being a professional tennis player, no matter what talent I had. So it took me a long time, and I kept on feeling inadequate, and I kept on feeling that I wasn't whole because I wasn't pursuing what it is that I always wanted to do. So throughout throughout the rest of my life, I kept on taking classes, and then I would go and grab, and I did a project, and I would do something else. And until about 3 years ago, I didn't really allow myself to pursue acting. And then for 3 years, I was all in it. But being in a secondary market of Chicago, you have certain level of opportunities, and it takes time to build everything. And I'm not in LA and New York. Also, I'm a 45-year-old, married man with 2 children and responsibilities, and a job. So there are all of these things that kind of come in, and then you have to decide what is it that you want to do with your life and what are your priorities. And through this show, because it's been a process of self-discovery for me in speaking to actors and speaking to producers and directors and people in the industry who are doing what it is that I love and that I'm good at. I have some talent in acting, but it allowed me to come to a place where acting for me in this particular lifetime, I don't know if it's going to be a full-time endeavor. It'll always be a part of me to whatever extension it's going to be. And if an opportunity comes along and I get a regular spot on a TV show, I am very happy to change my mind. But
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be a part. And I've finally kind of took that burden off,
Right.
and I'm just allowing things to happen. And if it does, it does. If not, I have other endeavors that are like the show, that are creative and allow me to still be breathing that same air that give me more stability, if you will.
It's feeding that place in you that was like, no, I want to do that thing. And I love that, because I think as long as you trust yourself and you answer that calling, it will guide you to exactly where you're supposed to be with that. Because kids grow up, kids move out, time frees up. It's never ever too late. So there you go.
No, and again, having these difficult conversations with my wife, talking about marriage at the moment, right? I've been married for almost 21 years, and my wife has been through all these roller coasters of, my businesses and my acting and my other endeavors, and I'm the creative person that needs to have things that I'm working on, otherwise I don't feel like I am alive, which is a blessing and a huge curse. So having these conversations with my wife saying, look, I can't continue being on this roller coaster. We need to have some foundation and some stability. And she's right. So you have to either adapt or you have to walk away. And I'm not going to walk away from my wife and my children. So it's a process. This 2020 has been a very interesting, horrible, exciting year all put together.
I know it's been very intense. I feel like there's like a magnifying glass. So like all of that stuff just really becomes very, very magnified. And it's like, y'all have to do a little bit of emotional housekeeping, in the sense of like the things that we haven't been dealing with, the things that have been in shadow. I think they've definitely been coming to the surface, not only personally, but also collectively. And I think that right now there's something about the energy of this time that's demanding that we actually acknowledge and deal with this stuff that we've kind of been too busy to really actually attend to. I mean, I live in Southern California. There's fires everywhere. It's like, climate change is real. We actually have to personally and on a bigger level do something to kind of stop this. I've have an electric car. I'm trying to go solar. I recycle. I have compost. Like, I'm trying to do my part. It's like certain things are coming forward right now that we actually have to acknowledge and evolve. Me Too, Black Lives Matter, climate change, all of it right now is just coming to a head, and we've got to deal with it. I think for me, on a spiritual level, I keep on saying evolve or dissolve. I feel like we're headed into a new consciousness, and there's a vibration of that kind of like unprocessed subconscious material that's like holding us back. And so what's happening right now, because we are shifting, it's coming to the surface and people are freaking out. I mean, everybody that's out there on the street, like, hate to say it, but all the Karens that are like flipping out right now, they talk about the zombie apocalypse. I'm like, that's that girl. And it's like, I think she's just like alone by herself, faced with her demons. She's like, can't cope, and she doesn't have the world to project it onto because she's stuck at home because of like safer at home orders. And so she's like, finally gets out of the house and is like this vomiting of like, you know, darkness that like she's been having to live with it for the past 3 months in quarantine. I mean, that's very opinionated, but I just ultimately I feel like we all have to come into wholeness, and we all have our shit, our traumas. I want, you know, for lack of a better word, it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual abuse or physical abuse or anything, but there are certain things that happen to our life in our lives as children that we don't necessarily comprehend in an emotional way, and they lay dormant. And then something like this happens and they come to the surface and they're asking to be acknowledged and integrated and loved. And so it's up to us to do that work. Nobody else. Trump's not going to do it. Sorry.
No, that's I'm on the same page. And to me, it's interesting how, again, you know, dealing with a lot of things in my own life, and this 2020, you know, dealing with health issues, dealing with marital issues, dealing with you know, career issues, dealing with all sorts of things, plus discovering the show and discovering incredibly beautiful things, plus, you know, remembering things that are still holding me back that I need to get rid of. But that's the microcosm of it. Looking at our country, if we were looking at our country from just a purely human one-person perspective and looking at it from the macro side, you see of all of these same energies, all the same things that you were just talking to, and Trump and the people that are fear-based, you know, without judgment for anything, and feel free to believe politically what you want to believe, but there is fear-based and there is love-based. There are things that are uplifting and there are things that are holding you back. This same struggle is happening on a macro level to our country. And until we resolve it, we're not going to be able to move forward. So that is what's happening with our country, and it's horrifying to see, but I think it's a necessary process that we have to go through in order to continue evolving and grow as a society.
And I think that is the key word, evolved. You know, I think that you know, we are, what I learned in my understanding from my time in India is that, you know, life is 100% suffering, the Buddha believed, and it's an equation. There's physical suffering, there's psychological suffering, and there's spiritual suffering. And Americans live pretty well. We don't have a lot of physical suffering, but we have a huge amount of psychological suffering. And so the evolution that needs to take place is on that level right now. And I think that this is an opportunity for everybody to maybe kind of just step it up a little bit and like work on all of that stuff, like by being confronted by a lot of, just in that kind of same way of, you know, we don't see the world as we as it is, we see it as we are. So that projection that we have on the world right now, it's up to us to kind of really work on ourselves in a way that what we are projecting is love, it's not fear. And going back into, I just want to say one more thing, because judgment's come up a couple of times, because I think it's really an important thing for humans to have discernment. We need it, you know. And I think the difference between judgment and discernment is is like that person is bad because they're doing this thing. And so it's like, you know, they're, when somebody's kind of working through their karma or their process or stuff like that, and their stuff comes up and we see it, it's like shaming them for that piece is not going to allow them to come into self-acceptance and love. And so I think it's really important that when that stuff is happening, to still be meeting it with not only a place of love of other, but also helping them find love for themselves in those moments. So the judgment piece is more of a discernment of what's happening to help facilitate that healing through love, versus like that person's just a fucking asshole kind of vibes, you know.
And isn't it tough, even for us who, you know, I'm sure we're going to be called, you know, liberal tree huggers, but isn't it tough to?
I am not. I don't care.
Right, I don't care that either, and I'm fine with it. And by the way, what's wrong with hugging trees? I love hugging trees.
The cool thing is when the trees hug back. I mean, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's like the most amazing thing. Tree hugs are awesome.
I agree, but I found it to be so difficult. Where there are many points in you know, throughout this year that I wanted to just delete most of the people that I have on Facebook and tell everybody to F off. and saying, I can't believe you're thinking this way. And then I keep going back to, nope, that's not the right thing to do. That's not it. And the people, the same people that you want to tell to F off are the people who are your friends, your family, your loved ones. And you know how wonderful they are. And there are aspects of them that are, that need to evolve, as you've mentioned. And you can't just write them off and brush them off. You have to accept them, and you have to, help them through this journey, if possible, or at least not be a jerk about it as they're going through it themselves.
I mean, I think that getting curious about that point of view is kind of saved me in a couple of those relationships. I have done a little bit of like, housekeeping on Facebook, only because it's a self-care sort of thing. But I think that the people who I actually know on Facebook, like I really, really know them, it's more of like just trying to get curious and understand what is that point of view? What is that about? What is that coming from? Because I feel like the more that I understand it, the more I can work with it, even in my poetry and my art and stuff like that. It's like I think that just shutting it out, it creates like the polarity that I think is what our administration is trying to do right now, versus like the inclusive kind of understanding about the life circumstances that create that perception of reality. It's like, what is this?
Right. That's the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about, which is poetry. I saw that on your Twitter. Would you be interested and open to sharing a piece of poetry with us?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I definitely will. I'm trying to think, because I have so many different ones. What do we want to talk about? Because I have lots. I did a couple. Do you know what you want to hear?
No, I'm gonna share. I'm a poet as well. This is
Okay, why don't you do yours first, and then I'll listen to yours, and then choose a piece based off of what you read.
Okay. I'm gonna find one. It's long, but it deals with what we were just talking about. As recent as August 16th. So this was just a month ago. That deals with what we were just talking about, and then I would love to hear one of yours if possible. And my dad always tells me that my poetry is way too long, as these shows tend to be as well. So I apologize to anybody who thinks that way. Dear people who live under red, white, and blue, please pause for a second. I'm talking to you. There's no longer months, but just days till election, and it doesn't matter who's gained your affection. What matters right now is what's happening here. And if you just look, it's abundantly clear there's so many forces that want us divided. There's so many voices that are just one-sided. There's yelling on streets, there's fighting at home. How many of us are just feeling alone? There's stresses from COVID. There aren't enough jobs. The last thing we need now is more angry mobs. The places we used to look to for support are now echo chambers and trolling for sport. Objective reporting of news is corrupted, resulting in flowing of truth interrupted. It seems like we're lost and forgot who we are. Would we recognize us when looked from afar? We rose through adversity to build a great nation, and now we are mired in this stagnation. Togetherness is what we were fighting for. And now we are closer to more civil war. Your anger and bitterness are just a gun, but who's pointing it, telling you where you should run? Our country is white, and it's black, and it's brown. There's Christians, there's Jews, there's Muslims abound. Our people are straight, and they're gay, and they're queer, but isn't that more of a reason to cheer? If you treat everyone that you see as a stranger, of course you will live in perpetual danger. There's no way out if you're thinking that way. There wasn't before, and there won't be today. Let's stop all this nonsense and just take a breath. The way we are headed will lead to more death. Is that what we want for our country of ours? Is that the best use of our limited hours? If we're questioning what is the right thing to do, talk to each other as I'm talking to you. We have more in common, so let's start with that. Let's unite as a country and then move ahead. We have lots of problems that all need resolving. Dividing won't fix them. They will by involving. We're brilliant together, destructive apart. You know what is right. Just look into your heart. Don't dismiss what you're hearing me say out of hand. I may not be someone you're calling a friend. It's not kumbaya from a hippie tree hugger. It is from someone who views you as a brother. Dear people who live under red, white, and blue, please pause for a second. I'm pleading with you. Don't let others' anger devour your soul. It's only through love that you will take control. There's no longer months, but just days till election. And it doesn't matter who's gained your affection. What matters is how you perceive all the rest. My sermon is done. I wish you all the best.
I love that. It's beautiful.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to write. And I sat down and I just had to write. and they tend to be longer, but I'm okay with that.
You know what? The length doesn't bother me because I was very engaged throughout the whole thing. It's only when they're long and you lose me because like the metaphors I'm not with or something like that, or yeah. So it was engaging. So don't worry about the length. It's great. I love it. It's really good. I love that you called it a sermon at the end because it definitely felt like something that could be spoken. You know, like what do people do like when they go for poetry readings? What are they called? Like the live something or other, or like. I can't remember what it's called.
Not I haven't been to those, so I wouldn't know.
Anyway, it was great. Let me see what I can find really quickly because I have them all put away really, and I'll see which one. Sorry, it'll take me a second.
No worries. I know I sprang this on you, so but.
Oh no, it's okay. That's where we went naturally, so I'm about it. Okay. I really like this one only because it's like I wrote it quite a while ago. It's really pretty. Okay, let me see that one. Or nah, I'm not gonna do that one. This one's on my Instagram page. I really like that one. It's like what I wrote when I was first in lockdown. It's really more current. So I think I'm gonna do, I kind of like this one too though. This is pretty good. Okay, listen to me talking about how great my poetry is. I'm awesome. Okay, let me just look at them really quickly just so I can just see what's there.
Sure.
I feel like this is kind of a little bit in alignment with what we've been talking about too. Let me see. Sorry, it's taking me a second. Let me look at this one. I think I'm going to be more, let me do this one. I'll do this one.
Okay.
So my writing teacher, Jack Graves, he's awesome. He's actually teaching online classes. So if anybody wants to like do an amazing creative writing class, I highly recommend it. He's got all these really cool tools. But I've been in it for such a long time that now we do, you know, write like Bukowski or write like he'll assign certain poets and you read that poet and then you see what emerges from that. So this is after reading a poet called Ellen Bass. This is what came forth from that one. So this is called Unknown Void. I gave myself vertigo scrolling yesterday, searching for the missing tweet, the meaningful meme to fill the emptiness. Unknown void. Offline, my brain flips through the Rolodex of inconsequential memories. The greasy French fries and Zihuatanejo that gave us all the shits. Walking through the Beverly Hotel, feeling both important and not enough at the same time. They say when you die, your life flashes before your eyes. Mine's on slow-mo, taking its sweet time, collecting all of myself before passing through into another dimension. The smell of chlorine at the hotel pool during Libby's bridge tournaments. My sister and I, unattended, swimming until our lips turned blue. The red velvet lining of the metal heart-shaped jewelry box snapping shut with a muffled clang. The board game at the cabin, pieces like mini wrenches linking red and black pegs. The thread of life weaves its way through a series of breaths and gathers up memories of identities, the lost and forgotten, pitched tents, setting up camp beneath the underpass of my neural pathways. These are the things I will leave behind. Clenched teeth, whispered screams, shushing me at 2, struggling to get off of his lap. The 50-year-old surfer I met on Bumble who said to himself out loud, "This is gonna last me a while," before he ghosted me. These are the things I will miss. The soft tuft of hair on the edge of my newborn's ear latched onto my breast, eyes drifting closed and open again in the fight against sleep. These are the things I will take with me. The chiming leaves of the Aspen Cathedral as wind rushes through the forest and the crunch of ice crystals beneath my feet from the last spring's snow. This is where I'm going, dissimulating into the cacophony of wild birds in Belize at dawn, dissolving into the intense stillness like the low flat energy of the desert in Joshua Tree, merging into the electric green strobe light flash of the last kiss of the sun being eaten by the sea.
I love that. So so visual, and the images are bringing emotion, and it was very, very lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's end with that because
Okay.
I think this was meant to be a wide-ranging conversation. I just didn't realize that we were meant to meet at this moment and talk. And I'm thankful for the universe to bring us together at this moment. So hopefully this conversation can be of service to others. And best of luck to your movie. I'm very happy that you started writing and that you've reached a point where you feel whole again. And I hope that continues and is becoming something that only you spring from.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on your podcast. I can't wait to see this and others as well. So thanks again.
It's my pleasure. And thank you to everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. We know you love acting and life and spirituality and all of the things that we talk about as much as we do. And that's why we do this for you. Thank you.